good time? I hope so. I'm going to ask you all a question, okay? Which is, what happens when you're a kid and you grow up and the future that you're living in is not the future that you've been promised? Now, a lot of people would just, go on Twitter and complain, there's no instant teleportation from here to Australia, hashtag first world problems. But the next guest is actually, he's going to do something about it, because he's decided that he's going to launch a sort of one-man quest to put a colony on Mars within our lifetime. So, this is going to be absolutely amazing. I've got so many questions and only half an hour within which to ask them all. Please put your hands together for Bas Lansdorp.
Hey, Dandy.
So, really quickly, let's talk about you first. Who are you? What's your background?
I'm Bas Lansdorp. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. I'm 37 years old. After my Master of Science, I started a PhD, which I abandoned to start my first company in wind energy. Did that for 3 years and then decided that I really wanted to pursue my dream. Sold part of my shares in my wind energy company and started Mars One to land humans on Mars in 2025.
Okay, so first question, why Mars? What's the big appeal for you?
Well, there's two reasons. First of all, for some reason, Mars has a certain appeal to me, and it's difficult to explain why. But I don't feel the same sort of appeal with the moon. It's almost like being in love. And it's two extreme places where, well, to the one there have been humans, but there's no permanent settlement there either. So both are extreme challenges, but for some reason that I can't explain, just like you can't explain why you love your girlfriend, she's funny, she's smart, but there's other smart and funny girls and you're not in love with them. Mars attracts me. And the other reason is that technically, although Mars is further away, it's easier to establish a permanent settlement on Mars than it is to do on the moon, because Mars has resources. There's water in the soil, there's carbon dioxide and nitrogen in the air of Mars, so there's resources, local resources that you can use to support your colony.
Okay, so you're not obviously working with, say, NASA. You aren't getting any backing from a government or any of these type of organizations, and the innovative model that you are working on in order to get to Mars, because this is going to cost about $6 billion just for the first rocket and the first pods to land there.
Yeah, it's 6 billion, all the preparatory missions, including the first human mission. So it's quite a few rockets, actually.
But you're going to fund it through a combination of reality TV, and then you're going to sort of sell the broadcast rights to the moment.
Yeah, I don't really like the term reality TV because it makes you think of the kind of reality TV that's on TV right now.
Sure.
I prefer comparing it to the Olympics. It's actually where I got the idea of financing the mission. The International Olympic Committee makes about 4 billion from sponsorships and broadcasting rights, so that's 2/3 of a Mars mission. And that's also what, in the way that we will present this to the world. It's the best of the best people. We'll find the best people for this job, and we will see how they perform that job, just like we watch the top of the world in the Olympics.
And in terms of access, in terms of us as viewers, if we're watching this happen, are we going to be able to watch 24/7, or is it going to be very much more like, it'll be like a pre-packaged event and then we'll get it sent back to us maybe, 2 or 3 days after it's actually happened, and then we'll be able to watch it, a bit like the moon landing?
I think it will be a combination of the two. So there will definitely be moments that we want to watch almost as a live stream. For example, when they go, imagine the first humans are landing, the pod is landed, the hatch is opening, and the first human or the first group is walking down the steps. We want to see that, right? We want to be there with them to experience that moment. So that's definitely going to be something where we will be live streaming. Other parts, it's not exactly interesting to see people sleep on Mars. You want to see the exciting bits, so we'll well, we might live stream many of the exciting bits, but it's also up to the people there. I mean, if they, for example, think that the evening dinner is private time, then they're going to decide to turn the camera off. And actually, there's nothing we can do about it.
Sure, sure. So let's talk about the timetable. So the first probe is
2018.
2018.
Yep.
So that's pretty close. And then take us through from 2018 to 2025, which is the sort of planned first landing.
Yeah, 2018 is a demonstration mission. We'll reuse a platform that NASA has used in 2007 for the Phoenix mission. We'll put our own experiments on that and to demonstrate some of the technologies we need for the human mission. It will be sent in 2018, and we currently have Lockheed Martin under contract, already working on the mission concept study for that mission. And we're very happy to have, I mean, Lockheed Martin is the most established aerospace company when it comes to landing on Mars, so it's we're very happy to have them. 2020 we're sending a rover to Mars, a slightly larger rover than what's currently on Mars. It's not going to be a science rover, it's going to be a workhorse. It will drive around on Mars to determine the exact location of the outpost in the area where we know it will be. So it will determine, is there enough water in the soil for to support the outpost, and is it nice and flat for construction. 2022 we're sending all the hardware, 2 life support units, 2 living units, a spare rover, a second rover, and a supply unit. Everything in 2s obviously for redundancy. The 2 rovers will put all the equipment in the right location, activate the life support systems, so water will be produced, nitrogen will be harvested from the air. So we'll have a breathable atmosphere, water in storage, even before the first humans are leaving low Earth orbit. And then again 2 years later in 2024, the first crew will depart to Mars and land after 7 months.
And then there's going to be another mission. There's going to be a second crew, isn't there? A few years after that.
Yeah. So the reason why going to Mars sounds almost impossible. NASA has been talking about going to Mars since the moon landing. Around the time of the moon landing, they said we would be in Mars in 20 years. It's now 45 years later, and we're still going to be on Mars in 20 years. And the reason why that timetable is constantly slipping is because the return mission is so difficult. I'm sure everybody here has seen the explosion of the Antares rocket. Orbital Sciences is a company that's quite established. A couple of months ago, Arianespace, an even more experienced company, lost a satellite because it entered into the wrong orbit. These are companies that have thousands of engineers working on the rocket at the very last moment, and they fail in launching it from Earth. How can we ever imagine doing that from Mars without humans there? To me, it's practically impossible.
Sure.
So instead of trying to do the impossible and bring humans from Mars back to Earth, we've decided we send humans there and bring more crews every 2 years to really establish an ever-growing permanent settlement there.
So how many people will be in each crew?
Each crew will have 4 people in it. It's going to be 2 men and 2 women from 4 different continents. We want to be mankind's mission to Mars, not a Russian or a Chinese or a US mission. We want the whole world to feel involved in this adventure.
Okay, so in terms of the technical challenges getting there, because obviously NASA, India, we can put probes around Mars now, we can put landers on Mars now. Do we have the technology to actually put settlement pods on Mars now? Like if I wrote you a check now and it didn't bounce, could we get this kicked off tomorrow?
Yeah, the entire Mars One project is designed around existing technology. It's not stuff you can buy at Walmart. It's not off-the-shelf technology, but there's no new inventions needed. We know the aerospace suppliers that are building this for Mars One. They know how to do that. They need to design it. They need to build it. It needs to be tested extensively, but no new inventions are needed. So the systems we need to land are only slightly larger than what NASA has currently landed with the help of Lockheed Martin. The life support systems are things we understand. Robotics are are there to make this happen. Probably the Mars suits are actually still the biggest challenge, especially the lifetime of the suits, because there's just not enough information on that.
So, in terms of, you're not going to be able to test the hard wearing of this gear really on Earth. So there is an element of sort of being a pioneer, I guess, because you are going to go out there on kind of the seat of your pants, and what you bring with you is what you've got to work with.
No, not really, because we will be building the outpost before the humans go. So the rovers have been operational there for one for 4 years, one for 2 years. So they have an established track record. Our life support systems will have been operational for 2 years before the humans leave Earth. The landing systems that we use for all the cargo, which are 8 landings, it will be the same that we use for the humans. So that will have a much better track record than the lunar lander, which had no track record actually when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed in it on the moon. So we'll have quite a lot of experience, and there the suits, the Mars suits that they will wear when they go out on the surface, they are the only thing that we will not be able to test extensively, because testing them on Earth is really not comparable to testing them on Mars.
So a question I suppose I think people may ask is why? Beyond just, because it's there, what benefit do we gain from having a permanent human colony on Mars?
Progress. So humans have become so successful because we are always pushing the boundaries. It's by pushing the boundary and living an uncomfortable life in a new situation where humans come up with great solutions for those problems and make their life better. And the kind of adventure that we are embarking upon can unify the Earth. And it's the best way of bringing countries or groups of people that are not friendly together closer is by having one common goal and working on that. That's why it's important for us to have the whole world involved, 4 continents in each of our crews. A mission to Mars can inspire kids to want to be astronauts again instead of pop stars. That's the kinds of things that it can achieve. And besides all these big goals, there is the technological spin-off. But for me, that's actually much less important than the progress that we will create with this. I have the feeling that the space agencies are almost using technology spin-off as an excuse for space exploration, whereas I believe that space exploration is actually the goal. It's exploration that has made us from cavemen to space dwellers.
Sounds very noble. So in terms of, you said that you're working with Lockheed Martin, who are probably the biggest defense aerospace. I think they kind of single-handedly command like a full % of America's spending for everything. So they're a huge established name. What are they like as a partner? I mean, so for instance, you sort of ring them up and you say, "Hi, you don't know me. I've got this idea to put people on Mars." How does that first meeting go where they don't kind of go, "Who are you? How did you get this number?"
Yeah, no, it's actually an interesting question, and I didn't ask them, but I did ask actually one of the other aerospace suppliers that we talked to, ILC Dover. They make the suits for all the NASA missions, not the life support, but the actual suit that the astronaut is in. And I had meetings with 5 aerospace companies in the first year that I started Mars One, when the plan wasn't even announced yet. And I asked ILC Dover, "Okay, you get my email and you actually invite me. Why?" And they said, "Well, we get a lot of crazy emails. We get people who ask us to dome a crater on Mars and things like that. And we can't do that. But we got your email and you said, I'm looking for different aerospace suppliers. We're considering you for the inflatables. We need a 25-meter length, 4.5 meter diameter space inflatable for Mars. Can you do that?" And we can do that. And they said, "If you ask us something that's very within our capabilities, then we expect that you are asking all your other suppliers also something that's within their capabilities. So you probably have at least a half-decent plan." And that's why we invited you. And I think for Lockheed it was the same. we don't ask a 10 or 20 or 30 metric ton landing system for Mars. We ask for a 2.5 metric tons useful mass to the surface, which is only slightly higher than what they've done before. And well, everybody has seen the things that we've already achieved. We have a Nobel Prize laureate on our advisory board, the former NASA CTO on our advisory board. So we're achieving things, and that makes it more attractive even for these kinds of dream partners to come on board.
Okay, so when I wrote on Twitter that I was speaking to you, and a few of the people who have volunteered, a few of the kind of the global volunteers, sort of said hi. And I was personally a little bit surprised, because I was expecting, you know, if someone says, oh, okay, one-way trip to Mars, I was really expecting it to be mostly kind of young men, full of bravado, all the rest of it. And I was surprised, probably that's a fault of me, but I was surprised that you had, you know, a lot of people from various backgrounds, obviously from across the globe. What do you think makes an ideal Mars colonist?
I think that the people who have applied, indeed it's everyone. It's men and women, more men, but also quite a few women. It's all ages, it's all backgrounds, it's all countries that you can name. I think it's the same people that if they were alive 200 years ago, they would have migrated from Europe to the US. It's the explorers. And I think that's 1 or 2% of the population. And when I speak in audiences, I often ask who would consider going. And it's usually 1 or 2% of the people that raise their hands. And when I ask who would literally give an arm and a leg not to have to go to Mars, then I get a few hands also.
Should we do this now? Okay, show of hands. One-way trip to Mars, all expenses paid. That's not bad. For those who can't see, that's quite a few, actually. That is quite a few. Who would sacrifice an arm and a limb not to go to Mars? Okay, a few.
I think the Engadget audience is a little bit more likely to savvy, raise their hand.
Okay, so how do you... Because it must be hard when you've got hundreds upon thousands of volunteers, and you have to narrow it down to 4. And you have to narrow it down not just to 4 people who are going to be healthy and capable of surviving all of the challenges of going to Mars, but also you have to find 4 people who aren't going to kill each other, having been locked in a rocket for 7 months, and then, you know, you can't pop off to the shops to avoid them because they're locked in a tin can literally for the rest of their lives.
Yeah, that's actually exactly the biggest challenge of Mars One. It's not in finance, it's not in technology, it's in finding a crew that can actually do this. So it's not about identifying the right individuals, it's about identifying the right teams with the right individuals in them. But it's mostly about the teams. If we have 2 perfect teams and we exchange 1 person, then they might be 2 terrible teams. The right person we will look for is indeed a person that's extremely tolerant, that can make the best of any situation. It sounds very stupid, but he needs to have a good sense of humor.
Sure.
Because if the situation is dire, then it's always the person with a sense of humor that makes it easier to cope with. And all the other skills, the engineering skills, the medical skills, the botanical skills, because they will be growing their own food, that's all stuff that we can teach anyone with a good brain. But it's really about finding teams that can do this. So we're selecting them, but more importantly, in the next 8 to 10 years, we will train and test them. We'll build a copy of the Mars Outpost here on Earth, and we'll lock up the teams that we are training as if they are on Mars. So they need to take care of themselves. They will have the communication delay that you have when you communicate with Mars, the water restrictions, growing their own food, and when they are training, we'll give them all kinds of terrible situations to deal with. One of the worst being if the toilet breaks. Because if it's already a stressful situation and it starts to smell, That's when people break down. It's a really,
Okay.
it's really one of the hardest situations. Then you see the sock of your colleague again, and you've always been annoyed by it, but you've always been able to calm yourself, and now it's there, and there's the smell, and the life support system is hampering. You know, these kinds of situations. Then we will find out if the team sticks together and solves the issues, or if they fall apart. And that's. But you're absolutely right. The biggest challenge is finding a team that will stick together under all circumstances.
Okay. Do you think maybe it's hard to word this, but when you're asking someone one-way trip to Mars, I guess at some point they're going to consider the fact that they will never see their family again, and they will not live the rest of their life on this planet. And I guess that must be quite a big thing to come to terms with. And I know that some of the people who have signed up, who have volunteered, have got families. Do you think you would not give their application? I'm not saying that you would disregard them, but would you give sort of prominence to those people, knowing that they are basically leaving behind people, basically families?
I think that in history of exploration, there have always been situations like this, and some people do indeed leave their family, at least leave their friends behind to go to a new place. I'm not our selection expert, I should say, but
Sure.
what I understand is that if we have especially people with children that are applying to go, especially somewhat younger children, we would need to see from them more dedication than from a person that doesn't have these kinds of ties on Earth. But it doesn't necessarily exclude them. People leave their families for all kinds of reasons. Not all good, unfortunately, but
Sure.
also for good reasons. And this is part of life, and it's up to them to decide where their priorities are. But we will definitely have to take into account a little bit higher risk with people that have a family, that they might drop out of the program during the training. It would be a big waste of a lot of energy if someone from team number 2 drops out after 9 years of training.
Sure. So let's talk about life on Mars now. Okay, so everything goes perfectly. 2030, you've got maybe 12 people living on there. Now, you said before you want it to be an international mission. It's not limited to one country or another. But I guess there has to be certain rules of civilization. There has to be laws. So, firstly, will the people who are there have to come up with their own system of governance, or are you going to say, okay, well,
This is how you do it.
this is how you do it, for all intents and purposes, just imagine that you're living in Europe or America, and
Did you read The Red Mars by Kim Stanley Robinson?
I haven't.
It's you should read it. So, in that book, they tested the big crew. There were 100 people were going, and they were really observed for a long period of time in an Antarctic mission, training for it. And when they went, as soon as they left Earth, they threw away all the rules that were given to them, and they decided on their own. We'll decide to do that from the start. So when we train our people, our groups will immediately have to decide amongst themselves: is there a leader, and who is it? Or does the right person to lead a certain situation stand up at the right moment? They will have to decide how that works, because as soon as they leave Earth orbit, there's no way for us to enforce it. So trying to control those kinds of things is completely illogical. It doesn't help at all. And if we let them decide these things for themselves, then we can really see how they think they should do these things in the best way.
So really, we could be watching almost a whole new civilization create itself, essentially.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. So it's good that we will be sending responsible people.
Sounds good. So, so let's talk about, again, we're at this point now where people are living on Mars. Will there be a permanent mission control running things, keeping an eye on things, or do you see it very much more once you get through that sort of initial period, you're hoping for complete self-sufficiency?
Now, I think complete self-sufficiency will really take quite a lot of time. The life on Mars will be very busy. There's a lot of things to do, so whatever they can outsource to Earth will be outsourced. A lot of things they will have to do themselves because of the communication delay. With the moon mission, mission control could say to the astronaut, pick up the rock over there. No, the pointy one. And we can't do that on Mars because in the best case it's 3 minutes, and you don't want to be waiting to hear which rock to pick up for 3 minutes, let alone 20 minutes when Mars and Earth are on the opposite side of the sun. So there will be more self-sufficiency from the start, but as much as possible will be done by Earth, because that's just the easiest way for the people on Mars. And certain tasks, they will become more and more self-sufficient because every person wants to have control over his own life. So at some point, the people on Mars will say, we don't want you guys to take care of this part anymore, we'll do it ourselves. And well, again, we can say, no, we want to do it, but then they will just simply take out the sensor and not tell us the readings anymore. So it's really, the people on Mars are in control and we are there to support them.
Are you encouraging people to go forth and multiply when they're out there, so that rather than it just being 4 adults sent every time, eventually the population will grow?
Yeah, we will ask them not to multiply anytime soon on Mars because there's quite a lot of dangers. First of all, we don't know if women will get pregnant in the reduced gravity because we don't know how gravity influences the process. We don't know how the fetus will develop, and we know that plants in 0G grow much thinner, much longer in all directions because there's no up and down. Okay. So what might happen to a fetus growing in the womb? We don't know, and it's not a thing that you should try at home.
Sure.
Or on Mars.
It's an important lesson.
But also, the first 4 humans are going to be in a very dangerous environment where anything might go wrong anytime. It's dangerous. It's also with just imagine having a child in a group of 4 adults. It's not really a good situation. It's not a community yet. So first of all, medically there needs to be testing on animals before humans can safely try it. And then the outpost, I think, for safety and for sociology needs to be 20, 30 people before it would be wise to have the first child. Of course, we'll send the medical requirements before the first mission goes because you never know what happens.
Sure.
But I already said once, we're sending responsible people, and no responsible parent would consider having a baby on Mars.
Okay, so we've probably got time for one more question. So I'm going to ask you, this is probably the biggest what if, because one of the problems you have with sourcing an audience and sourcing your budget from television is that people have very short attention spans. And this has never been tried before because a lot of the times it requires government with lots of money with deep pockets, just because it requires a lot of dogged persistence. What happens to the colonists if, for some terrible reason, the money runs out because people would much rather watch America's Next Top Model or America's Funniest Animal?
I've talked to a lot of different media experts, and they all say the same. We don't know if a show or an event is going to be a success, because otherwise we would only make successful shows. But they all say this is an exception. We know that this is what humanity is about. This is exploration is written in our genome. If you can make this if you can make this humanity's mission to Mars, where it's not some strangers we're sending, it's our TV friends that we've seen train, that we've seen in having their challenges, overcoming them, going to Mars, settling there. This is something that people will watch for decades. So I believe it's really our biggest challenge to finance the first mission. And after that, things will be a lot easier than that. Also, the media exposure is not our only source of revenue. It's also intellectual property rights. All the systems that we have developed by our aerospace partners, we will be co-owner of the intellectual property. For example, in growing food with less energy and less water, recycling, which is even more important on Mars than it is on Earth, solar cells. There will be developments made for Mars One that have a lot of value here on Earth. So that's one of the other business cases, and there's many more. So it's a whole new world. Imagine when Columbus was trying to sail to India and stumbled upon the US. He was thinking about developing a new trade route, and he actually discovered the most powerful nation on the Earth instead. So it's there's so many new opportunities that will come out of this. It's not just about a great adventure for mankind. It's literally the next giant leap for mankind.
It sounds very good. Well, I think for myself and everyone here at Engadget, I wish you all the best.
Thank
you very much for taking the time. Big
Thanks for
round of
having me.
applause. Stay tuned
Thank
and
you.
stay seated. More stuff is coming along the way.